When you're down to your last $50 with your son staring at you like you're supposed to have all the answers, desperation has a way of looking like hope. That's how Nate Rowan, a single father who had already lost his job, his marriage, and almost his dignity, found himself bidding on a collapsing boathouse at a backwoods auction. It wasn't a dream home. It wasn't even much of a home at all. With its sagging roof, shattered windows, and rotting planks half swallowed by Millbrook Lake, the boathouse looked like a skeleton clinging to the shore. But the auctioneer's voice cut through his panic. Minimum bid $50. And Nate thought, what else could he do? This was his last shot at giving Jaime, his 12-year-old boy, something resembling a home. The drive to the lake had been 3 long hours of winding back roads, an old Honda coughing like it might quit any second, and silence heavy with things neither father nor son wanted to say. Nate had rehearsed lines in his head, words that might make this decision sound wise, even noble. But when Jaime finally asked in that careful voice kids use when they don't want to hurt their parents, "Dad, are you sure about this place?" all Nate could say was, "We need a place to live, and this is what we can afford." That wasn't an answer. It was survival. And survival, for now, would have to be enough. What neither of them knew as they rolled up to that forgotten lake was that hidden beneath the cracked floorboards of their new ruin was something worth millions, something that could save them or destroy them. The moment their Honda crunched onto the gravel road that hugged the edge of Millbrook Lake, Nate tried to see the place through his son's eyes. Pine trees pressed close, their branches weaving shadows across the dirt, sunlight flickering gold and green like stained glass. Then, through a break in the trees, the lake appeared, a perfect oval of dark water reflecting the sky. For a brief second, Nate felt the tightness in his chest ease. "It's pretty," Jaime whispered, and Nate almost believed that maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be the mistake that broke them. But then they saw the boathouse. Leaning, crooked, patched with plastic where windows should have been, the structure looked like it had been abandoned decades ago. Moss crawled up its north wall, shingles curled like dead leaves, and the dock groaned under their weight as they crossed it. James stared with the same expression you'd give a dead animal on the side of the road. "It has character," Nate said weakly. "It has holes," James shot back. He wasn't wrong. Inside, the air was damp, heavy with mildew. A sagging loft ladder threatened to collapse if you so much as looked at it. The floor sloped in places where water damage had warped the boards. No electricity, no plumbing, no insulation, just 4 walls, a fireplace built of stone, and the smell of rot. But standing there with his son looking smaller than ever, Nate forced optimism into his voice. "We can fix it." Together, that night they laid out air mattresses in the corner, ate sandwiches from a cooler, and listened to the lake lap against the pilings. Nate stared at the sagging ceiling long after Jaime fell asleep, wondering if this gamble was his final failure. But outside, the lake whispered something different, something that felt almost like possibility. In the days that followed, father and son slipped into a fragile routine. By morning, Nate patched what he could with the few tools he'd managed to keep. By afternoon, James sat by the window, sketchbook balanced on his knees, drawing the lake and the forest and the bones of their new home. The boy had a gift. Lines flowed from his pencil with the confidence of someone who saw the world differently, who noticed details most adults missed. Nate worried he'd never be able to afford the supplies James deserved, but watching his son lose himself in those drawings gave him a flicker of pride he hadn't felt in months. At night, they'd sit on the dock with their feet in the water, eating canned soup by flashlight and trying to pretend this was an adventure, not desperation. but desperation was always close. Linda, Nate's ex-wife, had called from her new apartment, her voice sharp with worry, reminding Nate that custody could change if he couldn't provide stability. He hadn't told Jaime that part. He couldn't. Instead, he told stories about pioneers, about making do, about how sometimes the hardest times gave you the best stories to tell later. Jaime tried to believe him, but his eyes gave him away. Eyes too serious for 12. Still, there were moments, fleeting but real, when laughter cracked through the heaviness, when they dangled their feet in the cool lake water, and Nate thought, maybe this broken place could hold them together long enough to figure out a future. He had no idea that the future was already waiting under their feet, sealed in wood and brass, waiting for the boy with the sketchbook to notice the hollow sound beneath the floorboards. It happened on the third morning. Jaime was sketching near the window when his pencil rolled across the warped floor and disappeared between two loose boards. Dropping to his knees, he pressed his ear against the planks, and that's when he heard it, a hollow echo, deep and wrong, like knocking on a coffin instead of solid ground. "Dad!" he shouted. Nate came in, wiping lake water from his hands. He knelt, tapped the floor himself, and felt his stomach lurch at the sound. Crawl space, maybe. But it didn't feel like one. Nate pried up the first board with a crowbar, wood groaning like it hadn't been touched in decades. Beneath the planks wasn't dirt or lake water, but a carefully built chamber, its walls smooth concrete, its floor dry. And in the center sat a chest. Heavy, locked, waterproof, military grade. Jaime's breath caught. "Treasure," he whispered. It looked like it could be. Together they wrestled it up onto the floor, panting from the weight. Old brass lock, polished latches. Something someone had gone to great lengths to hide. Nate ran his fingers over the lock, the weight of possibility pressing down on him. Jaime's eyes sparkled with a mix of fear and excitement. "Should we open it?" he asked. Nate hesitated. They'd bought the boathouse, sure, but did that mean they owned what was hidden beneath it? He should have said they needed to wait to think. But when survival presses against your ribs, morality starts to bend. That chest was more than wood and metal. It was hope. And hope in that moment was worth more than gold. The key wasn't easy to find. Jaime discovered it days later, hidden in a loose stone inside the fireplace. His hands trembled as he pulled it free, brass cold and worn by years of use. Nate had driven into town to check property records, leaving Jaime alone with the chest. He tried to wait, he really did, but curiosity gnawed at him until he slid the key into the lock. With a soft click, the latches released. The lid creaked open. Inside, not stacks of cash, not stolen jewels, but something stranger, paintings. Dozens of them layered with tissue paper, colors still vibrant despite the years. Portraits of faces that seemed alive, landscapes of the lake in every season, abstracts that felt like emotions given form. At the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, was a leather-bound journal. Jaime opened it, breath catching at the first line. The Journal of Alma Faye, 1987. If you are reading this, then I am likely gone, and you have discovered my sanctuary. By the time Nate returned, Jaime was surrounded by canvases glowing in the late afternoon light. He looked up, eyes wide. "Dad, you need to see this." Nate froze in the doorway, taking in the impossible scene. He picked up one painting, a self-portrait of a woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair, eyes full of pain and wisdom. It was raw, honest, alive. He felt something shift in his chest. Whoever Alma Faye was, she hadn't been ordinary. And whatever these paintings were worth, they weren't just art. They were pieces of a soul. Over the next week, father and son pieced together the mystery of Alma Faye. The journal spoke of solitude, of a need to create art unshaped by the demands of galleries and critics. But between the lines, hints of conflict bled through. A sister named Elena who begged her to come home, a man named Richard who dismissed her work as a breakdown, not a breakthrough. Nate's trip to the county records office confirmed the boathouse had sat abandoned for decades, seized for unpaid taxes. Locals remembered rumors of the hermit artist, a woman who came to town only rarely, paying in cash, vanishing back into the woods. Then one day she stopped coming at all. To the world, Alma Faye had simply disappeared. To her family, she had abandoned them. When Nate finally reached Elena by phone, the woman's voice cracked with bitterness. She spoke not of genius, but of betrayal. Alma hadn't just vanished. She had left her sister to handle their dying parents, to shoulder responsibilities she refused to face. "Burn the paintings," Elena snapped. "Sell them, I don't care. Alma Faye died 37 years ago." But Jaime, clutching the journal, read aloud entries that told another story. Alma hadn't run from responsibility. She had run toward truth, toward creation, toward a way of dying on her own terms. And hidden behind the fireplace stone, they found proof. A letter Alma had written in shaky handwriting, confessing that she was sick, terminal, and had chosen to spend her final months painting until her body gave out. The choice hadn't been about abandonment. It had been about authenticity, about leaving something behind that would last longer than she could. The final pages of Alma's journal painted a picture more haunting than any canvas. December 1989. She wrote of headaches, tremors, vision fading, but also of urgency, of needin'.